Got it.
Oh, hi, folks. Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello. We are so happy to be here with you today. I'm Anjana, developer advocate at Observable, joined here by my colleague, Mike.
Hey, everyone.
Hello, and our amazing creator from the Observable community, Carmen, who we're going to get started and hear from in just a moment. Today, we're going to be hearing from a bunch of amazing authors who have created some truly insightful and impactful notebooks as part of a couple of DataViz contests that Observable sponsored in February and March to celebrate Black History Month and Women's History Month. So we have a bunch of amazing notebooks that we're going to hear about today. Apologies for the technical troubles. We are running a little bit behind, but we have some truly awesome presentations and walkthroughs from the winners of these contests. So we are just really excited to introduce you all to them and to get them to answer your questions. So let us, without further ado, turn things over to Carmen, if you wouldn't mind saying hello and introducing yourself.
Hi, thanks all for inviting me. It's so nice to be here, sharing this virtual space with all of you. So thanks a lot. I hope you can see my screen.
Let me just make sure we can. I think we're not getting the screen just yet. Whoops. Having fun with new technology. Let's see here. Carmen, are you able, does it look like it's sharing from your side?
I see. Yeah, I see.
Here we go. Okay, got it. All righty.
Cool, thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, please, without further ado, Carmen, take us away.
Okay, so this is my proposal for the contest. It visually encodes 100 women from the architecture and the design fields, just in Europe and just on the last century. So the layout is a radial timeline with some years highlighted on the right here, and that organizes everything, all the beginnings, all the ends, and also a piece of each woman, a selected artwork, which is the black dot that you can see on each life. There are also the profile pictures that show up on the middle when interacting. Yeah, let's more or less, we can come back later. Just let me go a bit further the notebook. While I was coding this, I wrote a few thoughts about the why this approach. The answer is very easy. Like, it's a very personal choice because I don't have like a formal computer science background. I came from the architecture field. So I think the contest asked me a question that I couldn't answer from that field. I couldn't remember a single woman from my years at university, like on the history books, and that felt very, very strange. So I thought that, yeah, I would like to try something pointing out that thing. Then I have here some notes during the process, which is like it was very like a last minute thing. I think I was on a Friday meetup with Observable, and someone said that the contest was extended a few days, and so that meant that I could have some fun during the weekend. And the Saturday I was trying to find a dataset that could fit this approach, but it wasn't easy. And at the end, I found Momowo website, which is like a research project, European, that studies women's creativity since the modern movement. And they have a lot of documentation, and I thought it was perfect. So I managed to extract some of the basic information, like 100 names, dates, and profile pictures. And I think I started to have a look to how the database was with the observable inputs. I love them. They're so handy. And I went to bed. And then Sunday morning, I sketched. Here are some messy sketches, but this is my favorite part of every project, just pen and paper and chaotic ideas. And then I thought that the best thing to do was started very simple. So I started to test like the simplest thing I could think about, which is it was like a simple, straight timeline. And I was like, okay, I have something. Okay, let's try to have some fun. And I started to play around with radial. So I looked for some references because I never did anything similar in D3 before. The references are written on the code, on the cells that the ones that I was studying. And I just break the theme many times and just rearrange it. And I like to see how everything just moves. Until I think very soon is going, it came the very, very beginning. So the final design. Yes, I would like to finish coming back to the beginning and just comment a few further improvements that I made after the contest resolution, so weeks later, because I had like a very big to-do list that I didn't have the time. The first one, I think, it was improve a bit the interaction, because in the beginning it was just the name that was interactive, and now there's like an auxiliary shape which is covering everything that is triggering, so it's a bit nicer and smoother. The other improvement was the language. So now you can see in Spanish, my mom can understand it, which is very important for me, also the text. And the last improvement, but I think is the most relevant one, is that I collected all the Wikipedia entries of each woman, both in Spanish and in English. They're not the same. So now you can start here on this interactive piece, but you can keep your discovery journey like in many different places from here. So I think that's the main thing. And if you wanna ask me any question or whatever, I'm super happy to try to answer them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carmen. This is so impressive. I mean, wow. And I would love to know if folks have questions so that we can make sure the whole community gets to ask what they're wondering about the visualization. So feel free to post questions in the chat, folks, and we will make sure that the speakers get them. Mike, I thank you for sharing these links about radial DataViz and whatnot. What do you think here?
Oh, I'm elated. This is so wonderful to watch this walkthrough. I mean, I love the process that you see your hand-drawn sketches, which are awesome. And then we go all the way through your sort of attempts to have fun. And I like that we see that it isn't just, oh, I popped it in and it was done, right? Some of these more complex layouts take trial and error and exploration and discovery. And I think that this gets the attention while also still affording a lot of the visual cues where you can interpret and understand a lot of the data there. So I think this is just an awesome project.
Thanks a lot.
So cool. And I love, Carmen, that you said, like, the question made you realize that this information is so hard to find, or it's just not, at our fingertips. So thank you so much for putting this out there. I hope like a lot of architecture students out there can now see this and just really be inspired. I know we are all really inspired on the DataViz side as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know if Carmen is available to follow up on questions if folks have more questions in the chat, but where can folks follow you and your work, Carmen? Is there like a good place to reach out to you, maybe on Twitter or Observable?
Yeah, both. On the Twitter. I don't know if I can write on the chat my
Awesome.
name. And on observable as well. I'm starting to use it a lot.
Fabulous. Well, we are
Thanks
so
a lot.
excited. Thank you so much for being here and for participating in the contest and for participating and sharing all this with our stream. So thank you so much. All right. Thanks so much, Carmen. And now we're going to welcome our next presenter.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Karim. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you here. So we are really excited to see what you are going to share with us today from your entry into this amazing contest.
All right.
Yeah, great. So whenever you're ready, we would love to take a look at your awesome notebook.
Can you see my screen?
Not just yet. We are working on it. There we go. All right. Woo! Yes. Recursion for the win. All right. So yes, please take it away.
All right. So what you're seeing here is my submission for the Observable Women History Month contest. It's been a fun journey, to be honest. I was willing to submit something, so I come up with this idea of I looked at some data about gender diversity, mostly related to my geography. So I picked it up an infographic from the European Parliament showing the gender balance between women and men in the parliament, along with other statistics about the age, the party which the member is belonging to, politician party, and so on and so forth. And also, something that interested me the most was this evolution of female MEP in the European Parliament. But I felt like this was a bit of lay down in terms of charts, illustration, and stuff like this. It wasn't bringing much in terms of impact. You see the evolution. It's straightforward. You get the point by looking at this. You see the evolution was going from 15% of women in the European Parliament, reaching 40% in the current days, with an increase between in the 90s, then a stagnation, then an increase again. So everything is there somehow, but I felt the need to showcase something that is a bit more impactful. So I created this over-engineered visual, which represent exactly the same thing. I wanted to use the classical representation of the parliament, which is this often what you see, this kind of dots for either seats of the parliament, and this typical representation, and try to, which is actually the physical representation of it. It's a one-to-one match almost. And then I wanted to bring this idea of gender evolution, gender equality evolution. And although I use the stereotype, which is the flowers representing the woman in the chart, I wouldn't recommend to use this kind of stereotype like pink flowers and stuff like this, which is maybe not best practice, but I really had a hard time to find something else to represent like this blooming effect of women along the year, evolving through the balance. But overall, I felt like this is working out pretty well. Although, I can take the critique if this annoys some people, and it did. But anyway, so this is what I've submitted. The way I've built it is using it's actually a 3D representation. So it's fully 3D. It's every flowers is like a bunch of geometrical shapes put together and then animated. it's using 3GS, which is a JavaScript framework to do 3D graphics in the browser, and then of course in Observable. So the way I've done it is creating like a flower using in 3D, which I couldn't find anywhere, or at least fitting my needs. So what I've ended up doing is creating like a flower representation using the Fibonacci lattice, where each point goes along a spiral, and they are apart of each other by a certain amount of degrees, which is the golden degree derived from the golden ratio. And so what I've done is basically use this lattice. So that's all the points that you see in here, the red points around the sphere. Then I traced a segment between the center and each of those points of the lattice to get something that looks like this. By tweaking a bit the parameters that I set up, you could see how I ended up with something that looks like a flower, reducing the number of petals, adding a bit of stroke effect, the thickness of it, and then also the tempering to get something that looks like a flower in 3D. And then I've replicated this to I ended up using another type of shape, which is a tube with variable width to get the similar effect, but more performance when I replicated many of those to do the final representation, which is mixing the classical representation of the parliament with this blooming effect of women in the parliament. So yeah, that's about it for what I've done.
So cool, so interesting, all that went into making that happen. Thank you so much for sharing that, Karim.
You're welcome.
I know we had a lot of folks are finding it very impressive in the chat. We're getting a lot of wows. This is just really awesome to see. Do folks have any questions in the chat for Karim while we have the chance to ask? Or Mike, yeah, feel free to jump in as well.
I feel like I would need a lot of time even to come up with a question. I'm just reveling in how much attention to detail there is, right? That you could use a simple or simpler shape, or come up with a two-dimensional way of representing a flower by having just n number of small petals. But to engage the mathematics behind it to get the visual outcome that you're looking for, it's really incredible to see that level of depth behind this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and in fact, it was also a way to learn about the technology itself, and the few mathematics about how flowers actually are physically represented, in fact, and so it was fun in this regard as well. Although I wanted something that is impactful in terms of impression. So yeah.
It's awesome. So we had one question from Maya Gans in the chat. Hey Maya, which is, how did you think of this? Like, what was did you start out with something static and then make it very fancy, or was this just something you had a fully formed idea in your mind and just wanted to make it happen?
It was, yeah, it's the second thing. It's one of those things that were listed in my to-do list for a while. I knew I wanted this representation. I wanted something more metaphorical in a way. I keep like a collection of those, and I don't know the time to do this, but so yeah, this one was clear. I wanted this thing to happen this way. And so that's why I choose also the 3D stuff and everything. But yeah, it's one of those rare occasions. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. And yeah, for making this amazing visual and showing us your process. It's so awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. And now we would like to welcome our next presenter, Irene. Hello. Welcome. So lovely to have you here. How are things going? I think I'm just going to unmute you here. Oh, there we go. Oh, are we still? I think we're still muted. Irene, if you can.
Issues of
yes.
Now? Hello.
Hello. Hi. We're just having one of those days. This is live TV, folks. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we are really excited to meet you. I'd love to have you introduce yourself and then show us this amazing notebook that you made about the Nobel Prize winners.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation. I must say I'm blown away by the works of both challenges. It was really fun to participate, but it was even better to see what everyone was coming up. So thank you for doing these kind of activities. They're always very fun.
Thank you. You all made this happen, and it is just so amazing to see. So thank you so much.
Well, so about my project, so I was very fast at deciding what to visualize. Every year when they announce the Nobel Prize winners, I always think it would be very interesting to see how many men, female, etc. are winners, right? Because it seems that there's an imbalance. So I was very biased when I chose the data, but I also tried to use it as an exploration of basically to see if this bias was wrong or if it was right. And when I started it, I wanted to show the data as individual dots, just to show the people as individuals, not as a cluster of just numbers. And I decided for the dot plot quite fast because I wanted to see, like I said, individual people, and I wanted also to compare the numbers for women and also for organizations, because it was kind of interesting to see that at some point there were more organizations winning the Nobel Prize award than females. And I did it quite quickly. It took me a long time to find colors. I spent ages in finding the proper colors. My partner is colorblind, so I take it very seriously. And the areas are so thin that I wanted a lot of contrast there. And the funny thing is that I thought, well, this is more or less done. I know that I want to explore this data set much more, but I don't have much time. So I share it in Twitter, and I also linked to the challenge. And there was a funny moment where Nicola, another participant, kind of provided more ideas. So you should include a tooltip. It would be very interesting to see data by field, etc. And then you guys extended the deadline. So I was like, this is my opportunity to play around a little bit more, and decided to explore the data set by field. And again, I was a little bit biased when I was doing the exploration, because I knew that certain fields like physics and chemistry, the number of women winning the Nobel Prize is quite low, but I really didn't know about other fields. And it was interesting to see that the peace field and the literature peace field had a bigger percentage of female winners than any other. But what it kind of interested me was also the organizations that had won the prize, because there are more organizations winning than female winners. And I know that this might be not an interesting number, but for me, it was something that I hadn't really realized it, and I wasn't aware. So it was interesting to see kind of the shape of these force layouts and how they represented the data. I also introduced a little bit of animation, both in both visualizations. I don't think I would have liked it to work a little bit more. I wanted to add a date here, because the way the shapes are drawn is dependent on when the winners were getting the Nobel Prize. But I didn't manage to kind of control the text element like I wanted, so I kind of removed it. And what else? Yeah, I think that's kind of all. There's my notebooks are basically a dump of like me trying to be very ordered, but actually not achieving that at all. But yeah, I was also including some annotations, some information around the content and the data set, and I also kind of included a tooltip because it's quite interesting. For example, in chemistry and in physics, there's a winner here, which is Marie Curie, who won both prizes. So yeah, and that's kind of it. That's my notebook.
This is so awesome. Thank you so much. Wow, what do you think, Mike?
Another great project here, and this time I actually do have a question. Something that I have often struggled with in visualization is that the eye is drawn to things that are large, and often the story that you want to tell is that something is small, right? What you're saying here is it's only 6%. So you're actually trying to really get someone to focus on something that is the smallest part of your chart. And you talked about the contrast. That was one way that you drew attention to that in a really clear way. I'm curious if there were other ways that you tried to do that, or did you also sort of bump into a similar challenge that I'm describing there?
Yeah, so I decided to use dots to visualize the people, because by doing that, you're already providing quite a lot of space to the data. I think if I had done, for example, a stacked bar chart, it would have not been very visible. And then the darkest or like the most powerful color is the main protagonist. I think if I had used probably the green or the yellow color there, the part for representing the women wouldn't have been so visual, let's say. But yeah, it's a struggle when your main point of, or when the main goal of a visualization is visualizing this really small part, because it's almost like you need to zoom in and to provide the general view and then zoom in. Yeah, it's something that is difficult to find a solution that works for everything. Basically, you need to go case by case. Yeah.
Yeah, I also really like that the use of the individual dots. It helps us remember that each one of these visual marks is a person, right, or an award, where that can be lost in a bar that is just however many pixels high. We have this reinforcement that these are individual winners, and then you also get the visual cue that you can hover over them and access more information about them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is just really incredible. I know folks are like super impressed in the chat. Yes, everyone loves the colors, especially. And I'm just so impressed. You mentioned that this was just, kind of not a lot of time was available. And so this was kind of a really, a quick sort of thought from your mind. And it just came together so beautifully. I love it. Folks are saying it would be awesome to recreate with Plot, with the new DataViz library from Observable. Would be a good exercise if you want to try to see if you can match Irene's chops of these amazing design and colors using Plot. Definitely try it out. Thanks, Maya. So thank you so much, Irene. This has just been amazing to see. Thank you for participating and for sharing all of this with us. It was really awesome. Thanks so much. And now we would love to welcome Olivia, who is our next presenter. Hi, Olivia. How's it going?
I'm well. I'm so enjoying these walkthroughs. It's so great.
I am just blown away by everyone's work, and I'm just so grateful for you all to be here with us and able to share the inside scoop on how these all came together. So yeah, we would love to see your next or your presentation here. If you can go ahead and share the screen, then we will bring it on up. And voila! Excellent. Maybe would you mind zooming in a little bit just so we can perhaps read that a little more easily? Awesome.
Is that better?
Yes. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks so
Great.
much. All right. Take it away.
So this is my entry for the Women's History Month contest, and essentially it is a kind of interactive art maker. So you can make collages with memorabilia from the women's suffrage movement in the 19th century. And I think similar to Irene, the idea sort of came to me very quickly, but I had a kind of roundabout route to it. So I was actually thinking about making a notebook with a completely different topic of data. I was sort of thinking about natural history and thinking about, I wonder if there's a data set of like all of these animal or plant species that have been named after women or that have been discovered by women. So I was sort of hunting around, and I ended up on Google Arts and Culture, and sort of by chance, through Google Arts and Culture, I came across a digital exhibition they'd done all about these pieces of memorabilia from the women's protest movement fighting for the right to vote in the US and in the UK. And actually it all comes from this website, the Women's Suffrage Memorabilia website, and it's a person called Kenneth Flory, I think. It's his collection. He's collected all of this stuff, and it's just kind of amazing. It's all of these badges and ribbons and dolls and games and teapots and all this stuff that I'd never seen before, that it was all sort of designed and created to advertise votes for women. And I just thought it was completely fascinating, and I'd never seen any of this stuff before. So I had the idea. It's sort of based on an illustrator called, this is Katie Dean, whose work I'd seen before. She creates these illustrations where she brings together all of the illustrations from a book or from a kind of a series of photographs. For example, like the one on the right is all of Anna Atkins's cyanotypes, and creates these really beautiful kind of collage montages in a circle. So I was thinking maybe I could use some of the women's suffrage memorabilia, some of those graphics, and do something like this. And so the first step was, can I get the graphics into the notebook? So what I did was I brought the images into Adobe Illustrator, and then you can do image trace, where essentially you turn them into a vectorized image. And I found that that actually works really, really well. And so I was able to bring the graphics in as SVGs that I'd created in Illustrator. So this is some of them, and I've just given a little bit of information of what they are. So I really love this one. It's actually a luggage sticker, this butterfly. I think it's really, really pretty. This one is the lid of a tub of face powder from 1913, Votes for Women face powder, which is from the National Women's Suffrage Association in the US, which was led by a wealthy socialite called Alva Belmont, who believed that good grooming along with the vote were both essential for women to achieve empowerment, which I thought was amusing. I've not seen that before. And also these are paper fans, which were used a lot for advertising in the 19th century. I didn't know about this. And so you get sort of keep cool and raise a breeze for suffrage sort of slogans, and also InfoViz on fans for advertising. And so the first thing, once I got the graphics into the notebook, was, can I get them all within a canvas? And then I was originally planning to use a D3 force layout to try and sort of make the collage and do a collision detection and make sure that everything was kind of pulled to the center but not overlapping. But when I sort of brought it in and started just arranging things radially, I actually found that I liked it so much that I sort of decided I didn't need to go and do the D3 force layout, and was kind of happy to just sort of arrange things in spirals. And so this is all just using observable inputs, which, yeah, again, are just brilliant. It meant that I could get the interactivity in so quickly because all of the templates already exist. So you just use these tick boxes to add the graphics, and then you can move them around with these sliders, and then you just add as many as you like. And you can add other ones. If I add another flag, and I can make it a bit smaller, bring it over there, and then add a whole spiral. And so it's fun. You can just sort of play around. I love the fans as well. Move them around, resize them, make whatever arrangement you want. And then you can use the really nice functionality that you can download your image at the end and keep it. So it came all together sort of very, very quickly, quicker than I would have expected. One thing that was a little bit tricky is that some of the graphics are sort of bigger files, particularly the more complex ones. So the butterfly, even though I think it's the nicest of the graphics, is the biggest file because it's the most complex. So it does mean that if you add lots of butterflies, it does slow the notebook down, which is a bit of a shame. But Jacob Bruce, who's one of the other ambassadors at Observable, he suggested a whole load of improvements to the code to try and handle the SVGs more efficiently, which was really, really great. So big thank you to Jacob for that. And also, I think it's just wonderful that Observable makes it really easy for other people to contribute and to help you out. So that is the notebook.
Thank you so much. This is just so lovely to see. And I love, some folks have been pointing out that, the intersection, Maya pointed out the intersection of old art and generative art, sort of old artifacts and these like new fancy technologies is so cool. And we also had a question from Maya as well, which, is how could somebody take this amazing notebook that you've made, which lets you bring in all of these different graphics and adapt it so that they could use maybe their own graphics, maybe graphics related to a different project? Or is that something folks could do by forking your notebook, let's say?
Definitely. So all of my graphics, you can see that they're literally SVG strings. That's how they're imported into the notebook. So I made the SVG code in Illustrator, and then they're just file attachments. So you could just switch in different SVG and switch in the graphics, and make spirals with whatever graphics you wanted. So you could definitely reuse it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. No, that's so awesome. And I love this, the fact that everyone can kind of make a different piece of art with this notebook, and that it's sort of personalizable. So this is so cool. Wouldn't you say, Mike?
I sure would. I feel like I have nothing to add. I just want to echo your enthusiasm and the state of being impressed. It's it's so fun to see this intersection of new art and old art. And I've only been working at Observable for a month or so now, and I just keep seeing different ways of using similar techniques, right? I haven't seen this particular way of using inputs, of leveraging SVG files, all these different techniques that I hadn't thought about that people continue to surprise me with, and then I want to go out and start doing the same. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And I think we have a couple of more questions. And I just want to remind everybody to follow the work of all of these amazing creators like Olivia and everyone that we've heard from so far on Observable. Mike has been helping out and dropping links to everybody's Observable profiles. And please, folks, feel free to drop your Twitter handles, etc., so folks can follow up with you and keep apprised of your amazing work to come. All right. So thank you again, Olivia. And we are really excited to welcome our next presenter, Raluca. Hi. Welcome. Hi. I want to make sure I've introduced you correctly. Perhaps you could introduce yourself to all of us.
No, that's fine. And you can also call me Nicola. Irene was like, oh my God, I'm sorry, Raluca, I called you Nicola, but everybody calls me Nicola. Plus, in Switzerland where I live, Nicola is a man's name. So I'm always like, I get letters as Mr. Raluca.
Okay.
So that's fine. But yeah, my name is Raluca. I actually originally come from Romania. It's like a typical Romanian name. Should I share my screen now, Angela?
Please do. Yes, we would
Okay,
love to see your awesome work for the Women's History Month, and I believe Raluca is going to be our final presenter from the Women's History Month group of notebooks, and then after that, we will get to hear from some of the amazing creators behind the entries that won our Black History Month contest. So. We will bring up our last amazing Women's History notebook in a moment here.
I have some issues.
Well, you know, that is just how today is going. We are all having issues with computers today. But hopefully you should be able to, there we go. We should be able to see it now. All right. So I think we are ready for blast off with this amazing Women in Space notebook. Please take it away, Raluca.
Sure. So first of all, super amazing entries. I feel a bit like an imposter. I mean, like artistic stuff and what Karim did, like what all the contestants did was like super creative, and it took it like to a whole new level. So here I am with my scatter plot of women in space. But so the thing is with this, I actually saw Irene's tweet and I thought, oh, this is cool what she did. And I started thinking about like, oh, my idea was like, show something where I focus only on women, like completely leave the men aside, and show like something awesome, or like to me that is awesome. And for me, it's really awesome to travel into space. Like this is something that I'm probably not going to do in this life, and that I look up to, and I feel like, wow, these people that fly into space, they need to be really good at engineering, math, physics. They need to be physically super fit. They need to be team players. They need to have all these amazing qualities. So I decided to just look at all the women that flew into space. There are 65 of them. A little bit of a comparison. Yeah, there are 500 men. But I just wanted to focus on these 65 women. And kind of the questions that I was wondering is like, so where do they come from? Most of them, 50 of them are American. So if you look at my scatter plot, I color-coded the country. So basically it's the country where they flew. It's not necessarily the nationality, but it kind of matches. Sometimes it doesn't, but for most of them it matches, like it's also their nationality. So yeah, NASA has all the blue ones. And yeah, then it would be Soviet Union or Russia, China, Canada, Japan, and there are also some other nationalities like British, French, Italian, Iranian, and South Korean. No Romanian, unfortunately. But yeah, this was an interesting thing for me to look at. Then another thing that I was curious about was like, how old were they when they flew, and like kind of in between which ranges did they fly? And of course I wanted to see who was the youngest one, because it's always like we're attracted towards these, like, oh, I want to see the oldest and the youngest, like extremes. I also wanted to see how many times they flew into space. So I visualized this by using these rings, like each rings represents one time flight into space. And I guess this scatter plot kind of solves it. So I also had like one weekend where I worked on this, so not too much time, because I think when I saw Irene's, it was already like a few days until it closes down, and then you guys extended the deadline. So I was happy about that, and I like quickly moved through it. So a bit of insights that I found cool were, for example, Valentina Tereshkova was the first woman to fly into space. She was Russian. She flew in like, I think 2 or 3 years after Yuri Gagarin, the first man to fly into space. And to me, it looked a bit like she just wanted to do this and she did it and nobody could stop her, because then the next woman that actually flew into space was like, what is that, 20 years later. And it seemed kind of like a one-off, and like this woman was super decided to do this. The second woman is also Russian, actually, so it's like from the Soviet Union. But then Russia actually kind of, I mean, these first two women, they were Russian, but then like most of them, as I told you afterwards, they were American. and then another interesting thing that I saw was that there is such a thing as a space tourist. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm super ignorant, but I did not know that if I have a shitload of money, I can go into space. And yeah, so Anu Sheikh Ansari from Iran was the first female space tourist, and she was self-funded, so she paid for this. And then some other interesting things would be maybe, Barbara Morgan, she flew when she was 55, and she was like the first educator astronaut. Most of them, though, were flying in between 30 and 45. That was like the range. And something also, one more thing that I found interesting, and I really don't know the answer to this, is I noticed that many women that flew in between the 80s and let's say 95, something like this, they went like 5, 6, 7 times into space. And then it kind of like seems like, and when they did, so for example, let's look at Shannon. It was really like 85, 89, 91, and so on, like one after the other, like the years, there was not much of a gap in between them. And I noticed like after 95, they kind of flew, let's say 4 times maximum, but then not more. And I was wondering, I mean, I have no clue why this happens, but I just noticed this pattern and I found it interesting. Yeah, all the data comes from, so these are kind of like the insights that I found super interesting. Oh, and by the way, this one here, she was not 0 years old when she flew, but I really couldn't find her age anywhere. She's very mysterious about it. Yeah, so these are like little insights that I found super cool while I was making this. I had a ton of fun. And yeah, maybe just about the data set, because I should always acknowledge this. I took it from the Wikipedia site, which was absolutely amazing. They had information about everything. All I needed to do was to parse it, and there I got all my data in a nice JSON list. I think this would be it. Oh, and I would also like to thank Radames. So first I had this hover effect, and it wasn't working well at all. So an observable user made a suggestion to use a quad tree, and then basically when I click somewhere, it detects the closest point. And if you're on a mobile, for example, you don't have to like try to get to that point with your big fat finger. You can just click somewhere near it, and it will point to the closest one. So thank you so much for Radames. I actually updated it after I won, because I thought it wouldn't be fair if I updated with his code and then I won. So I updated after, but it's such an awesome, and it's really, I love using Observable. Actually, it's really, really nice to use, and the community around it is great. So yeah, that will be it, I think.
Unmuting is so hard. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Raluca. I mean, we love having you on Observable, and I love that this like community interaction kind of contributed to the final notebook coming together. Everyone in the chat is just blown away. Just really excited by seeing all of the extra work put into the background, and how the data becomes really personalized through these photos that you added, and just all of this. And I just think this really came together so beautifully, and everyone seems to agree in the chat. So thank you so much for sharing this with us, and for participating in the contest. And if anybody else has any more questions for Raluca, we can ask them for a moment. And otherwise, we'd definitely love to know, where folks can follow you. If Observable is a good place, or if you want to drop links to social profiles in the chat, we can definitely allow everyone to keep up with this amazing work. And next we'll be bringing up some of our participants from our Black History Month contest. So thank you so much, Raluca, for being wrapping up our Women's History Month presenters. Lovely to hear your walkthrough of this work. Thank you so much for sharing that process. All right. So now we're going to move back in time a little bit. In March, we celebrated Women's History Month. And in February, before that, we celebrated Black History Month. And so we are going to hear from some of the amazing creators behind the winners of that contest now in this second half of our lovely contest stream. And so first of all, we're going to hear from Will. Hello, Will. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Let me get my screen share going here.
Yeah, we are so pleased to have you, and it's just been so great hearing from everybody. And folks, you can check out the chat back scroll for links to everybody's notebooks and profiles. Thank you so much, Mike, for dropping in those links and some other related technologies that are involved. And we will get Will's notebook up on screen here. There we go. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Will. And whenever you're ready, we would love to hear about this notebook on the Great Migration.
Sure, yeah. So I put this together about the Great Migration, which was this really pivotal event in American history, starting in the early 1900s, around World War I, that saw this mass migration of Black Americans from the rural agricultural South to urban centers up north. And this was just huge. It totally changed the demographics of America in pretty fundamental ways, and affected what the country looks like today. So when I got started with found out about the contest, I started by just sort of I don't know, Googling and kind of surfing the internet, looking for inspiration and ideas. And I ran across this paper, and this was done by a couple economists. It was about the Great Migration, and they also had the data set that they used attached with it. So I read the paper, and I thought it was really interesting. And what really stood out to me about this was, so they use census data, and the census is really good at providing kind of aggregate data. They count everybody, and they ask questions about race. So it's easy to be how many people lived in this county in Alabama or something, broken out by race. But what these folks did that was really interesting was they actually matched the individual census records for specific Black men from the 1910 census to their records from the 1930 census. So you're able to see for a specific person, where were they in 1910, and then where were they in 1930. And so the idea for this map sort of popped into my head, and my original vision was that it would be this kind of big thing that you could dive into, and it would show sort of all of these individual stories of these guys migrating north, sort of enriched by the biographical data from their census records. And as I started to dig into the data set, I realized that they hadn't provided the full set of census data, that they had only provided sort of a truncated subset of data that was needed to recreate the conclusions that they had made in their paper. So I sort of pivoted on that idea, and I ended up with this kind of pared down version that's just more of a eye-catching title screen, but is still meant to kind of illustrate that, yes, these are this was a mass movement, but these were also individual people that were having to pack up their stuff and move to totally unknown new territory. When I was the sort of web that you see here was kind of an accident. When I was setting this up, I was this was my first time using the D3 Geo library, and sort of my first step was all right, well, let's just print all the data out on the screen. And so that's where I got all these gray lines from. And I thought it actually looked kind of cool, because you can see these guys are coming from all over down here, and then converging on specific cities up north. So it's sort of coming from all over Mississippi and Alabama, but they're all going to Cleveland or Chicago or something like that. So that's kind of how this came to be. The next chart I have here is, this is kind of a different view of what we just looked at. But here I've done a heat map of their source states and destination states. I did this using Vega, and I think the only thing of note here is that I've tried to arrange these states geographically, very roughly speaking, so that states that are next to each other geographically are next to each other in the visualization. So you can see like kind of like a clustering here that migrants moving north from the East Coast tended to settle in New England, for instance. Moving on here, so this is a slope chart. This is kind of like the occupation of the migrants before and after, like from 1910 to 1930. And they've been broken out into two cohorts, those that stayed in the South and those that made the move up north. So what I was thinking with this was like kind of those, like how they used to do and like for kids in newspapers where it's like sort of a spot the difference thing where I'll have like two images next to each other and it'll be like, you know, what's the difference between these two? And so you're like looking at this and you're like, okay, these two charts like look pretty similar. They're like kind of the same chart, except, whoa, there's like this big difference over here. What's that? And then it's because everybody that moved north gave up farming. So that's like sort of the conclusion that you're meant to draw there. And the final chart here, oh, and I should mention this is based on the D3 slope chart example. So I sort of adapted this into like a multiples format. And then the last one, this was done in Vega. This is just sort of the final conclusion of their paper. And it's comparing the like economic outcome expressed as sort of a percent of those that moved north versus those that stayed in the South. And the men that moved north saw definite improvement in their economic conditions. In terms of like data visualization, this is a bit of like an anticlimactic ending to just have like a bar chart. But I think if I had more time, I could probably come up with a more creative way to sort of just compare these two numbers. So that's my summary. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Will. This is just so interesting to see, and like the work that went into this and to just discovering all of this historical data is so interesting. If folks have questions for Will in the chat, we can definitely ask some. I would be curious to know, like you mentioned a couple of things that, you know, you might do if you had more time, or if you had more kind of energy and resources to spend on fleshing this out. I would love to know if are there any other sort of related questions that you didn't get a chance to answer here that that you would like to, or you would dig into, or maybe ask the community to dig into if they have time.
There's definitely some more interesting data to be gleaned from the sort of census records that they had here, and there's some other like sort of, I think, side conclusions that you might be able to get like looking through the paper and pulling out some more of their data. And I think if I had more time, I would also like to spend some time like sort of, I'm not like a graphic designer, but sort of sprucing these up a little bit. Like this could probably look a little nicer, but you know, this is sort of my first go at it, so.
Well, I think it is extremely impressive for a first or millionth go, regardless.
Oh, nice. I appreciate that.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, I think something that is sort of parallel to some of the examples we saw earlier is that the power of showing each individual story or each individual person with an individual mark on the screen really drives home a lot and gives you that personalization that you lose when you see sort of the higher level view like you have in the heat map below, which of course tells different stories. There was one, oh, sorry, Will, were you going to say something else?
No, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that. And that's something that I think is like unique to these kind of like online graphics that you can do, is where you can sort of like build the visualization out of like a large number of marks.
Yeah, well, speaking of building, there was one question here in the chat, which was, are there any tool functionalities that you wish you had access to? So perhaps something that maybe would have made this a little bit easier to go through, or that you would have created if you had more capabilities more easily at hand.
Well, this is like kind of unrelated to the visualization itself, but just in terms of like the data wrangling aspect of it, the source data that came along with this was in this stata format, which was a format that I had never used before. So to even get it converted to CSV I had to write like sort of a custom script. I found some node library that could ingest that file format and then output it into CSV. So I think what could be handy would be some sort of like Rosetta Stone type data converter thing that could basically take anything and turn it into anything else. I don't know, maybe that exists.
A babblefish of data. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
That would certainly be fantastic. Mike probably would be the best person to ask about good tools for wrangling data between different formats. So,
well, I am a former social scientist who earned my stripes in the Stata programming language, if we dare call it that. So have moved the transition into using R and then into using JavaScript to do that data wrangling. And have lots more to say about that, perhaps at another time.
Well, thank you so much for wrangling all of this together and for just putting together. This is such an interesting and informative notebook. So thank you so much for presenting it and for creating it in the first place. And definitely, folks, make sure you check out the rest of Will's work on Observable. And Will, if there are good places folks can keep up with you on social media or on Observable or whatnot, would love to give folks an idea in the chat of how they can keep up with you. And thank you once again for this awesome work.
Awesome. Thank you guys for this opportunity, and congratulations to all the other winners as well.
Thanks. All right. And so next we are going to hear from John. Hello, John. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear. And we are so excited to have you here. And we are really looking forward to hearing about your notebook for Black History Month and how it came together. So whenever you are ready, we will get your screen up for everyone. And in the meantime, Mike has been dropping some helpful data wrangling links in the chat. So folks can check out a couple of these tools. Tidy.js, I know, is one that Mike is a big fan of. So folks can check out some intro demos there. And also Arquero, how do you pronounce it, Mike?
Arquero. Yeah,
Arquero.
It means archer in Spanish, I believe.
Okay, awesome. And this is a tool coming out of the UW data land.
Yeah, Interactive Data Lab. They have too many names. Yeah.
It's awesome. All right, great. Wonderful. So thanks so much for sharing those links. And John, are you able to share your screen or your window with us?
Perhaps. Can you tell me how to do that?
Yeah, it should be down at the bottom. There should be a share button that'll give you the chance to select a window. All right, we have really sprung a lot on our speakers today. We had a problem with our usual streaming software, and so we've switched over to a new one, and everyone has just been pivoting along with us. So thank you so much to all of our participants today for putting up with these technical difficulties. And thank you to all of you in the chat for also bearing with us as we figure this out. And there we go. Here we are. All right. So this one we have, maybe you want to give a content warning and say that, we have some tough topics to discuss today. Probably should have said that earlier, but I think this is going to be really, educational to see things coming through this historical lens. So John, whenever you're ready, please let us know what all went into this notebook that you made for us.
Well, first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to contribute here. I really appreciate all the great work that you guys are doing. And so this is a real thrill for me to participate. This notebook is primarily a terrifying data set and a frightening amount of Vega Lite API code, which I was trying to learn at the time I made it. Since it's meant to be a notebook about history, many of the charts use time on the primary axis so that people have an opportunity to see patterns over time. I really like how in Vega Lite it's easy to set up charts so that you can drag a range in one chart and have it filter the other charts. You can drag that window that you highlighted to have a sliding window that shows you a fixed time range and how that varies as you shift the time window. One of the things that I learned was why you might, instead of filtering the chart, just change the opacity. So for the map, only the opacity is changing of the counties within the filtered range, and that disables the auto scale and allows the counties not to change their position, and that really helps you appreciate the locations of the counties in the filtered data. Another thing I learned was that there's a way when using Vega Lite to set the renderer to SVG instead of canvas, which evidently works a lot better for really large charts like the scatter plot at the bottom here, which I'll get to in a second. So the data set itself has a lot of detail, and that's great, but there's some of the important columns like the accusations and the methods has so many distinct values that it's really difficult to see patterns. And so I spent a lot of time manually reducing I created some extra columns and then manually combined several of the different accusations and methods together. And this is an error-prone and time-consuming process. It gave me an opportunity to really get familiar with the data, but I think there's an opportunity to have some digital tools to help people reduce the number of distinct values in a column of categorical or nominal data like this, and be able to test and validate the choices that they make. I realize in looking at this that I spelled assault wrong or in two different ways. But to be clear, what I did was I took any accusation like arson or burning down a white man's house or burning down a white man's store, and I just called those all arson in my secondary accusation column, in order to be able to map these to color and have a prayer at seeing some kind of patterns. So at a high level, I just wanted to reiterate the comment that's been made by several of the other presenters, and that is that when you have a data set, with visualization by its very nature aggregates individual data points, and that can be really dehumanizing for a data set about humans. And so it's a real challenge, I think, for designers of visualizations to be able to come up with a way that somehow preserves the humanity, the dignity of individuals. I attempted to do that, in the scatter plot, which shows names of individual victims and then has a tooltip to allow you to get some of the details of the individual's story and the accusations against them. And this scatter chart uses time on the horizontal axis and then uses the original accusations with all of their detail along the vertical axis. And that kind of forces you to read through all of the different accusations, and it's not that good in the years where there were a lot of lynching victims, because the names overlap. You can't read the names there, and you can't get the tooltip on only just the top names. So there's opportunity for improvement here. I don't know if this was the best I could do with Vega Lite at the time, and with my limited skills at understanding Vega Lite. Yeah, so I guess again at a high level, what this data set kind of indicates is that we have a really long history of trying to solve conflicts with extreme violence, and that didn't start with lynchings. It's not limited to the history in the United States, and it certainly didn't end, as we know, unfortunately, with the lynchings. But it's still a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Any questions?
Thank you so much for, we know this is a heavy data set, as you said, and thank you so much for pointing out that, this is humans that we're talking about. This is not just a kind of like data that is abstract and not related to the world. And so thank you so much for pointing out how considerate we need to be when we're thinking about, the real impact and the real human weight of data sets like this. So thank you so much for sharing your process of how this all came together. Yeah, and Maya points out, it's because each data point is a human being, that the fact that the data isn't aggregated and forces you to see and to say their names is really important. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
Yeah. Something really powerful that I found about this is there's a term in this book called data feminism. I'll share a link to, that is data visceralization. Like, it makes you feel something viscerally. And I think that in this scatter plot, as you refer to it down here, there's something encoded in the amount of time or effort that I have to scroll that makes me feel the gravity of the volume or the intensity of this of these atrocities, right? Of just how much there is. I literally can't just move past it to the next chart, and there's a visceral encoding as part of that experience as a user. So I think that that's really a powerful outcome here.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for putting this amazing visualization together, and the infinite scroll, and just the folks are pointing out this term, data visceralization, is really what we're seeing here. So thank you for bringing that up.
I've not heard that term before. Okay.
Yeah, me neither. But this
if
is, I think, yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll past that, there are some other more traditional charts at the bottom, which kind of indicate, the extent of the racism involved, as well as some of the trends in some of the columns that I made that sort of simplify the accusations to a smaller number of distinct values. One of the things that I was particularly struck with, and I don't know that I actually have a chart that demonstrates this, but the lynchings were not all of Black people, but the accusations and the methods of lynching varied a lot more for Black people. And that, I think, is indicative of the kind of cruelty associated with racism demonstrated in this data set.
Yeah. This is, as you said, a data set with a lot of cruelty, a lot of pain in it, and being able to, I don't know about other folks, but I know some of the folks in the DataViz community that I've talked to have mentioned that being able to get a data set like this and see, explore it and understand it better and get more insight into it is a way that folks have found to be able to kind of process, the weight of these historical events, and to be able to understand our history and its impacts on our current day better. So thank you so much for giving folks this look at this very powerful data set. And I think there's some more conversation going on in the chat. So if folks have other ideas for how one could visualize kind of overlapping names like this or other things related to this, let's definitely keep the conversation going in the chat and beyond. And as
thank you.
As is pointed out, this is a very important, if tough, topic to visualize. So thank you so much, John, for this amazing notebook and for being here with us to discuss it today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right. So we are going to now be hearing virtually from one of our Black History Month contest winners, Urmila, who has recorded a video that we're going to share with you all. So let us hopefully bring this up right here and make sure that we can hear Urmila. I'm going to focus this one and let's see. Please let us know if there's any issues with the audio on this, folks, if you can hear it.
I'm a finance graduate from India. Today I'll be doing a show and tell of my submission for Observable's Black History Month celebrations. So let's get on to it. I'm going to go through the start and finish of the process of making the visualization, the choice of topic, finding the data, visualizing the data, the difficulties involved in making the visualization, and what I would have done differently if I had more time. So the choice of topic. As an Indian, most of what I studied in history classes were mostly Indian history. And when it came to world history, it was mainly about World War I, II, and the formation of the United Nations. So my goal was to learn more about Black history. Observable had this few prompts about the directions we could take with visualizing the data, like advocating for racial injustice, or based directly on W.B. Du Bois's work, or provide an insight into Black history or culture. So that's what I chose. So as I was researching Black history, I came across this Wikipedia list of African American writers. The list consisted of 442 writers from dating back to 1746 to present day. It had information of their names, the work, type of work they did, the year their first work came out, the birth and death years, and so on. So I took this data, put it on an Excel file, which was dirty data. I used Excel to clean it, divided the data into columns, where I gave the column name based on the name of the author, the year it was written. Then I wanted the user to know more about a writer. So I manually went and found publicly available information of each writer's work. So I added those links as well. So this was my clean data, which looked like this. I had all these columns and variables, which I wanted to visualize. So as I was sketching out ideas to visualize my data, I used Pinterest as well for inspiration. I came across Lindsay Poulter's visualization of Fortune 500 list 2020 of CEOs, and of which only 5 were Black CEOs. So this was my inspiration. I took this grid-like format, and I decided that each square would be an individual writer, and I would classify them based on the type of work they did, based on color and texture. So that was my idea. So then it came the process of actually visualization. So I opened Observable. I decided to use D3 to visualize my data, and Suzy Lou's SVG annotations. Observable has this cool feature where you can use another person's code in your notebook. So I imported swatches from this Observable user's notebook into my notebook because I wanted to have legends on my notebook. So then I loaded the data. I set up my scales and width and height for my SVG. I was ready to code, and this was my final visualization, which was 2-part. The first part was an interactive main piece, and the second was a static timeline. The interactive version was in the form of a grid where the user could hover over a box and have a snippet of which author they were looking at, and then they could click it and be redirected to the writer's work. And then was the static timeline, which was mainly focused on individuals who had lifetime achievements. So that was the final visualization. Some of the difficulties I faced was manually sourcing the data and time constraints, which is why I reduced 442 writers to 100 writers. So if I had more time, I would have loved to visualize all 442 writers. So that brings me to the end of my show and tell. I would like to thank Anjana for giving me the opportunity to do the show and tell. And if you have any feedback or suggestion, please do not hesitate to give it to me. I would love, it would help me so much if you did. And if you have any questions, I am available on the chat to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Urmila. What an amazing notebook. As everybody in the chat agrees, very cool notebook. And thank you so much for making this amazing video. Urmila is based in India, and so the time zone is a little bit late for live presentation. So thank you so much for all this explanation. And if anybody has questions, Urmila is with us in the chat, screen name VizCrazy. So we can ask any questions we have, but I think folks are just really impressed by the styling, the tooltips. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think my question is very much on that theme, which is, where did you get inspiration for the colors? I feel like I am just constantly consuming other people's good color palettes and practices as someone that isn't much of a designer myself. And I would love to see some of the things that inspire you or led you to making this set of choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I think folks are really impressed here. Urmila is sharing that she's Chroma, K-H-R-O-M-A. So we can follow up on that and check that up later. Thanks, Mike, for the link here. So, and I know there are a lot of great notebooks. As Urmila mentioned, one of the cool things about Observable and about doing work in this community that we have on Observable is to be able to kind of, see things that look cool, color schemes that you like, and grab them. So if folks are impressed with Urmila's colors from this notebook, you can head over. We have the link in the chat. You can check out Urmila's African American Writers notebook and see the colors that are used there, and check out the Chroma tool that Urmila used to find these. So thank you so much. And if there's more questions, please, continue to ask in the chat. And thank you so much, Urmila, for being here with us in the chat. It is amazing to see this work, and we are all just so impressed. So thank you so much for participating and for entering this really inspirational notebook, both in terms of the content and getting to see some of these amazing writers. It sort of harkens back to our first presentation of the day around the architects that we didn't maybe know about. So love all of this inspirational work to discover folks, but also inspirational in terms of the visualization itself. So thank you so much, Urmila. And next, we're going to be bringing up our final participant of the day, Alex. Hello, welcome. Good morning.
Hello. How's
Cheers.
it going? Hey.
Hi, we are so glad to have you here with us. And Alex is going to be bringing us on home for our presentations today. We're a couple minutes behind schedule, but hopefully folks have another few minutes to hang out and see Alex's awesome work. So whenever you are ready, we can go ahead and share your screen.
Dope. Sounds good.
And yeah.
Oh, go. Oh, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Just want to say that, hello, my name's Alex. I'm a freelance software engineer. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay, cool. So, so my notebook is the racial wealth gap. It's about the, what specifically like the data and the data visualization behind it is about a specific paper. And this paper, well, I guess the main idea behind this notebook is that it kind of like walks you through what the racial wealth gap is. And like a little bit on a different take of like what this research paper does. So I think one way to go about it is just to like kind of act like if you're like looking at this notebook for the first time, it asks you from 1963 to 2016, if the average white family in the United States, if their wealth was $100, what do you think the average black family's wealth was worth? So, for example, you
wow.
thought
Sorry, Alex. Could I ask you maybe to perhaps like zoom in for us a bit, or maybe make the window a bit larger, just so folks can read all this excellent explanatory text you've got in this notebook? Okay, thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption.
So, So yeah, so if you just kind of go through and you kind of guess like what you think it would be over time. So if you thought it was like completely equal, like black and white families had the same exact average wealth, then you like bring it up to 100. If you think it's less than that, you kind of go down here. You're able to drag through on the line chart, and you kind of put in your guess. And then you go down to the next part. The research paper was a survey where people were asked the same exact question, so it kind of like puts what those survey respondents think or what they thought at the time. And then the last part, it'll actually reveal like what the actual amount is. So, for example, in 1963, the average white family, if they were worth $100, the average black family, on the other hand, was worth around $5, and like kind of how that's changed over time. And what the research paper was trying to say, it's this one right here, the misperception of racial economic inequality. One aspect is like, the actual gap itself, right? So you don't really expect it to be like 1/10 for a black family to be worth 1/10 of a white family. But it's also the misperception of like what like normal people in the United States think, right? So there's quite a large gap, like not only from like the $5 to $100, but also like from the $5 to the $50 that like people thought on average, or even like today, like people think that it's changed linearly, that it has like increased over time, when in reality it hasn't, and in fact it's kind of like fallen down a little bit. So that's like that was the main idea behind this notebook, was that based on this research paper, based on this survey that they asked 1,000 people, showing one, letting you have the opportunity to guess what you think it is over time. Two, seeing how the survey respondents said as like a general representation of like other people in the United States, and then the actual amounts at the very bottom. And then after that, the notebook kind of goes through some prose over like what the racial wealth gap is, some of the reasons why it is the way it is, as well as some like some potential solutions that people have for like policy, as well as other myths that people have about like the racial wealth gap in the United States and kind of how it's played over time. So that's my idea behind this notebook, just kind of like walking through like, giving your own input, seeing what other people thought, and like seeing the actual answers. The big wow moment for this notebook is probably like this part right here, because people don't really think that's like, 1/10. That's like a very stark difference. So this notebook kind of like walks you through to like, for that being like the big reveal at the very end. In terms of actual data visualizations and all that, it's not that, there's not a lot of data behind like this specific chart. Right here, there's like around, it's 5 different years and it's, 3 lines. So it's only around 15 data points in total. So it's not like a crazy amount of data. The visualization part of it itself is also not that crazy. The hardest part, like technically, was probably like this part, like being able to like drag these numbers around and being able to save that to like to a cell, so that way you could like show it in other parts. So that way, if someone like brings it up like that, then it'll like update for all the other parts. And there's also like some other annoying things, like, okay, labels when they overlap. Like most of the time when you do a lot of data visualizations, it's like the same data set. But in this case, since part of it's like user defined, you have to worry about like labels, and if they clash, then mobile and not mobile, and like having other labels. So a lot of that time went into like that kind of like minute details, which is always fun. I think the biggest struggle was like I wanted to do a lot of different crazy stuff with this data, like with this like kind of idea. So in the very beginning, I first found out about this research paper on Twitter. There's actually one specific data visualization in that paper, this thing right here. On the right-hand side. So this is the figure that had in the research paper showing like the survey respondents. So it's kind of similar. So, 0 down here for 1963 all the way to 2016. And then all the dots is like a single respondent. So you can kind of see like in general, you can kind of get like a feel of like how the average guess kind of like went up over time. Meanwhile, like the actual amounts like kind of down here below. This one's a little bit more confusing because they allowed people to guess more than 100. So some people like guessing that like, oh, a black family is worth like double the amount would be up there. So there's like a few things that I changed from what they had in the paper to like what I had in the notebook, as well as you can see there's a lot more years here, but it's not like evenly spaced. Like the first jump down here is like from 1963 to 1983. That's a 20-year difference. And then over here, it's like a 3-year difference. So I kind of like normalized that a little bit to kind of make a little more sense in the notebook at least, and like try to give at least like somewhat reasonable like divisions between all that. But like I said, like I want to do a lot of different crazy things. Like I thought like, oh, what if anyone who opens the notebook when they put in their guess, I save that to a database so you could see like everyone else's guess, and you kind of see like where you like fall around with that. But that was a lot more work, and I didn't really want to do that. I also had the idea of like, instead of splitting it up into like different charts, or into like different sections, just have like one section where you do the guess, you hit a button that goes next, it shows the survey results, you hit another button and then it shows the actual thing. But all that was like quite a lot, and fitting that all into like one cell was taking up more time than I wanted. So I was like, I'll just split it up and make it a little bit easier. But yeah, that's the general idea behind it. I guess for the colors for the actual chart, I tried to go after this notebook right here from Web Douieb. So, you know, he has a lot of different data visualizations. The prize for this contest was like a book about like all the different data visualizations he made back in the late 1800s. So I was kind of going for like, okay, like I don't want another like white and black chart with like different line colors and all that. So let me try to at least like, you know, kind of with these colors emulate the coloring scheme, like the background and the colors of the lines and all that. So that's what I try to do here, but like the colors aren't exact, and I could have had more time to like kind of make it a little bit like truer to this with like gradients and all. Yeah, that's Notebook.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Folks, I think, have been totally blown away by both the actual data here and this presentation, the way that this data has been presented with the guessing, being able to sort of make your guess and then see both what a lot of people thought and what the actual facts are. And yeah, Mike has just shared the link to the W.B. Du Bois Data Portraits book, which is this fabulous collection of data visualizations by Du Bois and his collaborators, and was one of the prizes that we offered to the winners of our Black History Month contest. So I know folks are really interested in how this worked on mobile. Kaiser Waltz asked whether you had to do anything special to get this working on mobile. It looks amazing there.
Yeah, I just like made like Chrome has a little thing so that way you could like test to see how it looks on different devices. But I think like code-wise, I just checked to see, it's kind of hacky, but I was just like, if the width of the screen is less than 640, then like change the dimensions a little bit. So so in this case, I made it so instead of like portrait mode, it's kind of like a little bit more landscape, and to try to make it like fit the screen a little bit better. It's not perfect, and there's a lot of like overlaps and labels I didn't like really take into account. So you can kind of barely see it here. It's kind of hard to zoom in here, but like, you know, the label here is kind of like overlapping with the label there. So it's not like the best work that, it's not like the best experience on mobile that you have. But Observable, like if you use the built-in width cell, it's a little bit easier to like make like responsive charts. And what I like to do is like you could have multiple windows open, like when you work on an Observable notebook, and every edit you make will like update all the other tabs you have open. So sometimes I like to have like something like this open on like one side of my monitor and then like the actual bigger one open on the other, so that way I can kind of guess where it is. You could also open up the notebook on your phone, and then that will also update whenever like you're coding on your notebook. So that helps a little bit with like responsiveness and mobile design as well. But it's not perfect, and there's a lot of like little bugs here and there. But for the most part, like just making sure that it's responsive to the width is like usually enough to make like an okay experience. There's also like some touch screens when you try to drag, it's a little bit different. Like the JavaScript API is a little bit different, so you kind of have to like be wary about that. One other question I saw was about like the data for the dragged points. So like being able to, you know, on this chart dragging the points and then saving that to like saving that as a state, so that way you could access that data in other cells. I don't remember. I think there's like a mutable. I think I use like a mutable cell somewhere around here. Yeah, I don't want to like get too much in the code, but I think there is.
Well, we want to get into the code. We also folks were wondering, and perhaps this is what you're getting at with the mutable, but Maya Gantz asked whether you leverage generators in Observable or some other way to store that dragged data to render the plots.
Yeah, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the first chart, the one where people put in like a user input, it's a view of cell, and you know underneath it, it's an SVG chart, and there's a lot of logic in here, so that way, like whenever someone drags it, then it will update using like the view of API, I guess, to update the value of the guess variable, and guess underneath the hood, or guess is just a map of like, what year and what the value is. So that way, whenever you update it, it updates down there. And then all the other downstream cells, like the cells down here, down below with like these and all that, with the other visualizations, it'll update with those new values and like automatically redraw the charts. It's not the best because, for example, like every time you drag it, then this chart like reruns. So that way, like the line like always keeps getting redrawn, which is kind of annoying. But it works. And I think the hardest part with this is like figuring out like working with like a custom view of cell can always be fun. Like there's the built-in inputs, which are amazing. But if you want to have like a more like, an SVG chart that like some specific interactions like yield a new value, then you kind of have to dig down on like how view of actually works and like making sure you like dispatch an input event whenever you want to update it. So yeah, it's you might be able to like figure it out, but like the view of guess cell has like all the logic with that. So.
Yeah, so this is a really, really interesting look at some of the observable keywords that folks might not have used before, like mutable, which Mike just helpfully dripped a link to. Thanks so much, Mike. And also views. So this view of keyword, if you haven't worked with that before, there's a link to the Introduction to Views notebook in the chat. So thank you so much for all this insight. This notebook is so impressive in terms of the way that, you've leveraged all of these different features of Observable and of the visualization to make this truly work on mobile and work by touch and by clicking and all of this stuff. So the interactivity here is just really amazing to see and to learn from. So thank you so much. And yeah, I think folks are still sharing more resources in the chat. Thanks so much. Yes, another great one for grokking view of, shared from Maya here. Thanks so much. And yeah, Alex, just thank you so much for bringing this data to life like this. It's, truly interactive and just amazing and shocking and terrifying in some ways to see, but just it gets, I don't know, I feel like I'm able to connect with the data so much better through a visualization like this.
For sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here with us. And yes, everyone is agreeing. This is amazing work and just so engaging. So thank you so much, Alex. And yeah, please feel free to drop links to where folks can follow your work. And on Observable, we had links in the back scroll there in chat. Thank you. All right, Mike. Wow.
What's left to say?
An amazing group of creators and presenters. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today. Mike, what do you think? What have you thought about all of these notebooks we've seen today?
I'm intimidated. I think that something I just want to put out there is that these are such impressive customizations and really detail-oriented notebooks. And just a reminder, if no one else, just to myself, that you don't need to get this deep in the weeds to start revealing information in your data sets on Observable, that it's really quite quick to use something like Observable Plot or Tidy.js to start working with your data sets. And I am also inspired to see just how far people are taking these possibilities in terms of customizations with interactions and graphics and how users will end up engaging with them.
I could not agree more. And I just want to, I think it's like, I do agree like with your point about this is sort of, there's so much great work here that it can be intimidating. But at the same time, I think we have such an amazing array of different like kind of levels or different complexity. Some folks only had a day or a couple of minutes to put together something. Other folks have been doing data visualization since the dawn of time and are amazing, like amazingly, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So if folks want to take a look at everything that we've seen today, here's a notebook back in the chat, back scroll of all of the Black History Month DataViz contest winners. And then we also have another notebook collecting all of the Women's History Month winners. So I, for one, just think this has been just such an amazing kind of, both a learning roller coaster and an emotional roller coaster of the data that we've been looking at and the real, impact of kind of the human experience in the world here, and seeing really how these DataViz notebooks have kind of brought that to light, both in terms of the inspiring, uplifting stuff, some of the much harder and heavier data as well. And yeah, I just think it's been so amazing to see what folks have been able to really like bring to life through these visualizations. I am just so impressed and humbled and just so glad that we have all of these amazing creators with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I, Anjana, as both educators, this is what we hope for, right? Is that people can take these skills and apply them in creative and interesting and impactful ways to tell powerful stories, to draw attention to pressing social issues. And it's really fun for us to be able to see what people are doing on the platform and doing what they've learned. I will say, if you're new or you're trying to learn things, I just put a link to upcoming events. So tomorrow I'll be back on talking about working with fishy data, and we'll sort of walk through that process starting from scratch. And then next week, Ian Johnson and I, and Jalat and I are going to be giving a workshop for people that want to get started with observable plot. So if you're new to working with visualizations, or you want to just come check out our new open source library, this is a great way to start plotting your data.
And thank you so much for mentioning that, Mike, because yeah, following our meetup group is a great way to stay tuned of events that are coming up, and also following us on Twitch, of course, to make sure you get notified when we go live. We are streaming more and more these days, so look forward to lots more DataViz explorations and community content and all kinds of interesting learning sessions. That is definitely what we're trying to do here today. And I just want to give another huge shout out to all of the creators that shared with us today, that entered these contests. Also, everyone that entered these contests that wasn't featured on the stream today. We had so many amazing notebooks. It was really hard for the team to kind of pick winners here, and all of them I learned something from, and I think the community, is able to learn a lot from. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating, for presenting and sharing your process and challenges and ways of thinking about things today. And thank you so much for everybody who joined us in the chat, for all the great questions and just applause for our amazing contest winners here. So we are I am just blown away by everything that we've seen today, and we're just gonna have to go back and digest and take another look at the notebooks and keep learning from all these amazing creators. You can go back through the chat scroll to find links to folks' notebooks and where to follow them. And we hope that everyone will keep in touch and keep making these amazing creations so that we can keep learning. So thank you so much. Thanks, Mike, for co-hosting with me here. And thank you again to all of our presenters. This has been truly phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. And thank you, Anjana, for wrestling with the AV setup and getting us, and of course, pulling this whole event together.
No, well, thank you all for being here and for being patient with us. And as we figure this out, and we are going to be back on Twitch tomorrow. So stay tuned. We will see you tomorrow. And yeah, just cannot thank all of you enough. Love this community. Love seeing everybody come together. And we will see you again soon. Thanks so much, folks. Bye. Bye.